And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
This week, most of the news came out of the Supreme Court of the United States, which, at the end of its term, was announcing major decisions, including the Janus case, a landmark decision which overturns 40 years of precedent and affects thousands of workers across the country. Now, contrary to what those on the left may tell you, it really didn't cause any worker to lose any right. Instead, it took away the compulsory union dues which were being paid by folks against their will. Has implications that are really far-reaching, but especially into the political world, because it will undoubtedly affect the public sector unions. And remember, this case applies to public sector employees, but the public sector unions' ability to finance political campaigns, something they did to the tune of nearly $170 million in the 2016 cycle. So there's going to be a lot to watch as we see how all of this unfolds. And on the heels of the Janus decision came the announcement by Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy that he's retiring after 30 years. A Reagan appointment, he was often a disappointment to conservatives and became the swing vote on a large number of cases, both economic and social. And with his retirement, another opportunity for President Trump to name a Supreme Court justice. Already, the Supreme Court has put out a list of 25 names or so, a couple of dozen names, some very prominent ones, including Utah Senator Mike Lee. That would be interesting, but as a good Pennsylvanian, I'm still rooting for Thomas Hardiman of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. But the truth is that any of the nominees being promoted by the Trump administration right now would be a significant improvement over the judicial philosophy of Anthony Kennedy, who too often departed from the core strict constitutionalist, strict constructionist views that he espoused during his confirmation back in 1988. So there's going to be a pitched battle over the new nominee to the Supreme Court. It's going to be fun to watch, but it has very, very significant implications for those in the business community, those who have social issue concerns, and really across the board issues, because the Supreme Court has become so powerful and the judiciary following it has as well, something that isn't necessarily what Americans want. The tripartite system of government works best when it's co-equal branches of government. This week, of course, saw yet another round of primary elections and yet another defeat of a Democratic incumbent by an upstart socialist candidate. Congressman Joe Crowley from New York, defeated by a young woman who was outspent by better than 10-1, but in a low turnout primary, she out-organized and out-hustled Congressman Crowley. Now, it's important to note that Congressman Crowley was no, moderate to centrist Democrat. He was a hardcore liberal, dedicated to taking on Donald Trump at every turn, and was seen by many as a challenger to Nancy Pelosi's leadership as Speaker should the Democrats take control of Congress after the November midterms. He's out, and a socialist is in. And for the Democrats, an increasing problem, because socialism really isn't something that the American people are prepared for. If you want to look at what it does, take a look at Venezuela and see how things are going there. Third world socialism is not what we want. On the contrary, capitalism works. Look what it's doing here in America, where economic growth is, in fact, rising the tide that lifts all boats. We have the lowest unemployment in a long, long time. More people employed right now than ever before. And companies looking for workers rather than workers looking for jobs. And a sustained economic growth pattern now that is far outdistancing what we saw under the Obama administration, where we never got to 3%. In fact, 1.5% the last year in office. Now we have a robust economy that's really doing an awful lot for everybody because of decreased regulation and decreased taxation, or at least rates of taxation. Those things are great for the country. And now we enter into Independence Day weekend. And since Independence Day falls in the middle of the week this year, it really falls on Monday, July the 2nd, which was the day when the Continental Congress actually voted to sever ties with Great Britain. But we celebrated on the 4th. And it's a great opportunity for all of us to just take a minute and pause and reflect on the Declaration of Independence and what it means to all of us. For in that declaration is encapsulated the greatest things of humanity, and the fact that for the first time in history, a nation was born out of the concept that our rights came from God rather than from government. Think about that. And that will be, as you celebrate Independence Day, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.